time to get your fix. Come on down, get your horrible gaming review. 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 Wow.
Hello, my name is Zachariah with Old Man Gaming, and this is another horrible game review. As usual, we got to do some disclaimers. Number one, the word horrible in the title of this content does not necessarily refer to the game or DLC that I am referring, but much more the content itself. I do snap judgment reviews here. I only get about 5 to 10 hours to review each game. I'm trying to give you a quick sense of whether you're going to enjoy a game right off the rip or not. With that, and the fact that I believe video games is one of the most subjective forms of art in mind, I do not give scored reviews here. Instead, what I will do is I'll give you an overview of what the game is and its story, then I will, spoiler free of course, and then I will tell you the pros and the cons of the game from my point of view, as all reviews are. And then I'll tell you whether I personally will be sticking with the game outside the purposes of this review or not. That being said, I am super excited to start off this batch of reviews with a relatively positive review. The game that I'm looking at today is Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. Okay, so Shovel Knight was kind of a runaway indie hit back in 2014. An old school kind of homage to old retro games as a platformer sort of game. And I must confess, I have never played a Shovel Knight game before this one. It just never really interested me, so I just never really took the time. Not saying they're bad games, I'm just saying I've never tried them. So this is my first experience with Shovel Knight, and I gotta say I was a little bit worried that I'd be out of my depth, since there have been so many games that I haven't tried before this that maybe I wouldn't know what was going on. That is not the case. One thing Shovel Knight's creators, Yacht Cub, has done really well as of late is really allow this IP to kind of get out there. They've allowed other companies to take it and do something different with it. They had a card battler not too long ago, and now this puzzle game. And this is a puzzle game, although it does some things that, well, I've just never seen puzzle games do. So, what is Pocket Dungeon? Well, the storyline is very simple. Most of these games have simple, no-thinker storylines. That's not a problem, but basically, Shovel Knight grabs a box, he gets sucked into a pocket universe with all the other knights, who I'm assuming were actually bad guys in the first games, and then he has to run around trying to find a way to unlock it. Now, the game actually takes place in a roguelite system. You do a run, there is a certain amount of maps that you move through, each with its own enemies. Those enemy types have different things that they do and stuff. We'll get into that till you get to a boss. There's about, I think there's 3 bosses, then the final boss, then you beat the run. Each boss you fight is another knight. It unlocks that knight if you defeat them for you to then play with them. And then those knights change how the game works. How the puzzle works on the base level is very interesting. Much like other puzzles, things fall from the sky of different color and shape. Those things end up matching together, but in this, instead of just eliminating things like Tetris, like putting them together, or like Bean Machine, you actually play a little guy on the screen, Shovel Knight, or one of the other knights. You can move him around the screen, and then when he runs into one of these bad guys, he does damage to him. What's interesting that in that case, though, is the bad guys actually do damage back to him, but every bad guy of the same type connected also takes damage. There are also potions that drop from the sky as well that refill, I think, 2 life at the start. As you chain more together, you get more gems, which allow you to buy more perks and relics, much like your standard roguelite fare. Those perks and relics allow you to get better and better and allow you more chance of success through your roguelite run. Add in the fact that moving the knight or not moving the knight actually increases the speed or slows the speed of the enemies falling. You have this really, really interesting base mechanic that I don't think I've ever seen in a puzzle game before. Now, granted, I am not a huge puzzle game aficionado, but I've played my fair share. I actually purchased this game on a whim just because it had gotten such good reviews. And I gotta say, very rarely do I make impulse purchases that work out. I'm glad that this one did. This is just such an interesting premise for it. The idea behind the actual maps, though, is as you beat bad guys and survive, you will collect keys and chests, and eventually a door will drop down. You'll go through that door, move on to the next level. Eventually, of course, there'll be the bosses along the way, which are the other knights. You bring them down for the first time, and you unlock them to play. Now, this is where it gets even more interesting, because those knights, each one has a different mechanic. So take Shovel Knight. He has 5 starting health, which of course you can get better with relics and stuff. He does 1 damage, but his power is when he is hitting for his final time on a chain, he does more damage to everybody connected to the chain. Now, that's a very simple, easy power to get around, but then you've got much more complicated powers. You have Plague Knight, who has only 4 health, reduced health, but when he hits, everybody in the chain will take poison damage a second later. This right there changes the way you play, because once you hit that thing, you have to slow everything down and really think about where things are dropping, where things are connecting, and how to get the most out of your time. Especially since he has reduced health in the beginning, before you take that swing, you have to know where that potion is. I know what you're thinking, okay, so it's slower in that's not that much different. Then you look at somebody completely different, like something called, the knight called Spectre Knight. Spectre Knight actually takes damage from potions and only recovers health when he successfully destroys chains of enemies. Making it really interesting, because potions, which are your saving grace, are now the bane of your existence and destroy you faster than the bad guys do. That kind of stuff in this game just completely makes it so interesting. The replayability, well, we'll get into that in the pros, but there's just so many ways to play the game. Every run feels completely different. Now, I played it for about 6 hours, so I haven't played it for the full 10. I haven't played it a ton of time, but right now, I'm still playing it. I'm still making runs. I've beaten it twice, and I don't have any sense of not wanting to play it again. I want to play it again. I want to learn the next character. I want to find a way to get that character to the end, whether I prefer it or not. It's just such an interesting way to do a puzzle game, just because of that character moving around the screen. I also like that because one thing about puzzle games that I never liked is keeping track of all the moving parts, whereas with this one, you're just with your guy, and it's much easier to look at the other stuff around you. Of course, between each run, in addition to unlocking new characters, you can unlock new relics to stick into the game. However, some people have said this is bad because the best relics to get are the health bonus relics, but as you add new relics, there's less chance of you getting the health relics because there's more in the pool, that sort of thing. Also, there have been some other complaints, even from the highest praise of this, that certain characters aren't as useful as others, and I just don't agree with this. Mainly being G4 said that Plague Knight was almost completely useless. That was the first character I beat the game with, and the character that I do the best with. I think that the strategies here are all sound and interesting. You just have to look at the puzzle in a completely different way with each one. So let's go into the pros and cons. Let's break this thing down. Definitely more pros than cons on this, which is I'm very excited about. The number one pro, you probably guessed it at this point, is innovation. This innovates the puzzle genre. Now look, again, there could be another puzzle game out there like this, and that's fair if I'm wrong, but I don't remember hearing any sort of puzzle game, anything like this, anywhere. And that's really cool. It just kind of like goes a step beyond, in my opinion, and it just makes it so interesting. It really, when I watched the reviews, that aspect of it was what brought me to purchase the game in the first place, and then once I played it, I loved it. I think that this is a completely new way to attack puzzle games that I really enjoy. My second pro is the music. The music is amazing. It is a sweet retro Nintendo, boops and beeps soundtrack, but it is absolutely perfectly cut. Every dungeon, the music just gets me hyped. It gets me just going, and it puts me back in that nostalgia. It just tugs at my nostalgia heart so hard. And I know that the original Shovel Knight had music like that as well, but I still got to get it a pro here. It's just such great music. There are no tracks in that game that I don't find myself tapping my feet. My third pro is the replayability. Now, I already kind of touched on this in the overall description of the game, but man, the replayability is there. There is quite obviously a secondary storyline that I'm just starting to hit the tip of the iceberg on, but just the fact that the characters give you a whole new sense of how to play the game, a whole new way to look at the puzzles that you've already done. You know, you add in the relics, you add in the runs, the randomness of the runs, but just the fact that, like, oh, this puzzle, I did this with Shovel Knight, now I've got to do this with Mole Knight. He has a whole different power, a whole new set of things. There's just so much replayability to this. There's just, I almost don't like to boot it up, because when I do, I'm going to waste way more time in it than I wanted to. My fourth and final pro is the timing system. Again, this goes into the innovation, it kind of is, but it's enough of something different that I kind of wanted to speak on it itself. The way that it works with the moving your character, so the more you move, the faster things drop from the ceiling. Whereas the less you move, the slower they drop. It just makes it so cool. I love the idea of just standing still so that I could plan my next move, plan my next strategy, and actually having that time. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't make it too easy, it doesn't make it too hard, like none of that. There's plenty of times I still get trapped, I still get lost. It's just very interesting how they do that. It's just such a nice innovation, and I really like the idea of, like, oh, now I have to be slower with this character, or with this character I have to be really fast. It's just very interesting stuff. Now to the cons. Not a lot of cons here. My biggest cons, though, are this game is just made to have multiplayer. Made to have multiplayer. It just looks so much fun to play against and with people, but sadly, the multiplayer options are very limited in this game. So much so that you only actually have one option, and that is a versus mode, and it is only local. At least it was on my PC, so I can't imagine that it's online anywhere else. There's no matchmaking whatsoever, there's no ranked, there's nothing like that. It is just local, and while the mode is very interesting, it's kind of a miniaturized version of the normal roguelike adventure mode, just you're playing against somebody, so you can actually get through runes, get relics, the whole 9 yards, while the other person is dropping blocks on you. It's just really cool. It's a really cool way to play, and I think it's very cool in itself. I just find the lack of options a little concerning. Mainly that there's no online matchmaking even for that. Like, why can't I just go online and play against somebody? I would really like that kind of option. I hope maybe they add that later, but I think it's a real missed opportunity that this doesn't have more online matchmaking support. The number 2 is there's no co-op, and I found that a little disheartening. I played this game recently with my wife on Prelude to Divorce. Please check that out. I'm sorry, it was a little bit of a plug, but whatever. And one thing that I would have really liked is a mode where we could work together somehow, either on one screen or side-by-side screens, just moving through the storyline. I think this game, again, lends itself really heavily to that kind of multiplayer, and it's just not present here. You only get that versus mode, and I really, really, really wish there had been more to it. Alright, that's it. That's all that I have for you. So whether or not I'm going to stick with it, I think you figured it out by now, definitely. I mean, I paid for it. I always stick with games that I pay for. So I'm definitely going to be checking in with this periodically, and I love this game as a kill time while I'm exporting something sort of game. It's just great. It's just great there. You can also get it on the Nintendo Switch, and personally, while I've been playing it on PC, and I got it on PC because I had an influx of gift cards there, I think it would probably actually be better on a handheld system like the Nintendo Switch. I think it would lend itself to that kind of play a little bit more. Even on a phone, honestly, I really like this game. It's very simple and easy to do. So, hope that helps you guys out. If you decide to buy it, it's only $20 on Steam, probably only $20 on Nintendo, so give it a whirl if that price point isn't too high for you. I hope I made your decision, and hey, if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below, or tell me on Facebook at OldManGamingDH. On Twitter at OldManGaming9. Join our Discord. The link is in the description below. You can influence this and all of our shows from there. Check us out on Twitch, twitch.tv/OldManGamingDH. And as long as you guys keep watching and listening, we'll keep making them. We'll see you guys next time.